Program Director, we are live now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. A warm welcome to all of you who are present tonight. It's an absolute honor and privilege to moderate this event. This event that launches the book that celebrates the life and times of a gentle giant, a man who is humble, yet powerfully impactful. My name is Phumla Mganga, and I'll be your moderator tonight. May I request that we commence tonight's proceedings by requesting Reverend Mbete to provide us with an opening prayer. May I request Reverend Mbete to provide us with an opening prayer? Reverend Mbete, are you available? Please, could you unmute Reverend Mbete? If Reverend Mbete is unable to provide us with an opening prayer, may I request Mr. Mbulelo Bigwani to provide us with an opening prayer?
Sithanda zethu Baba namandla onke siyabulela Nkosi ngelithuba usipha lona ithuba Nkosi lokho esiphakamise lakho igama ngenxa yezicaka zakho Nkosi. Nanku ke Nkosi umfundisi Nyobole noma uNyobole Baba guqe phambi kwakho Nkosi bathobeke phambi kwakho ngelixesha thina sizama ukubaphakamisa sibenyusele phezulu. Ibana lendibano ke Nkosi usiphe uvuyo olufanele yona kuYesu Kristu Nkosi yethu. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Bigwani, for that opening prayer. Just in terms of a few opening remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I've been requested to keep and ensure that this program runs on time within the 2 hours that has been allocated. So my kind request is that everybody sticks to the prescribed time frame that has been allocated for them in the program. May I then request Reverend Ndumiso Mcombo to give us the welcome and acknowledgements and discuss the purpose of the day. Reverend Mcombo? Is Reverend Mcombo not present?
Moderator, there's a note there that he just stepped out and is trying to reconnect on the chat.
All right, may I then check if Sivu is available, Sivu Ngcetane?
Good evening, everyone. Moderator, I'll be standing in for Mr. Ngcetane. My name is Thelela Dumeni.
Thelela Dumeni.
Yes.
All right. Let me just check if Reverend Ngcombo is back online. I will then take on that item. So welcome to all the dignitaries that are present today. I welcome the presiding bishop of the Methodist Church of South Africa, Reverend Purity Malinga. I welcome Osingaye, Reverend Vido Nyobole. It's an honor and a pleasure to celebrate your event today. I welcome the Nyobole family and the children and the entire support structure of the Nyobole family. I welcome all the members of the connection present here today. I welcome Bishop Ivan Abrams, if he is present. And I welcome Bishop Ziposiwa, whom I saw online, and to all the members of the Methodist Connection and all the friends and family and all the supporters of this event. The purpose of today is really to launch a book that has been written by Thelela, and we look forward to an inspiring discussion that will encourage us, that will mobilize us into a leadership collective that is required for our country. May I then request that we proceed to item 4 and request Thembela, the stand-in for Sivu, to speak as a family representative.
Thank you, moderator. Mandiqale ngokubulisa kuwe, ndikunike imbeko kuqala. Ndibulise upresiding bishop, umama Purity Malinga. Ndibulise utata Nyobole nomama. Ndibulise i-guests zonke ezikhoyo engenogqiba ukuzibala. But moreover and more importantly, ndibulise kwi-superintendent yam utata uReverend Ziposiwa egameni lomfelo wam uYesu Kristu molweni nonke. Ndithabatha lithuba on behalf of ifamily yakwaNgcetane, oGebane, oMpethwana, oThikazi, nekhaya loRhadebe, oMthimkhulu, ukuba ndivuyisane nomntana wekhaya uThelela ngalo msebenzi umhle awezileyo ngale mini wokuba abe kanti ubhala le biography ngomntu omkhulu esimhloniphayo kwinkonzo yamawisile jikelele. Ndifuna ukuthi ngale mini Thelela siyazidla ngawe silikhaya. Most importantly, I would like to believe into yokuba ngale mini amathamba abantu abadala, utata wakho, umalume wam, utata uMemani Ngcetane, umama uNosipho Ngcetane uMarhadebe, utata wam personal uZakade Dumeni nomama uMarhadebe nomama uBabs Ngohla, the entire family, amathamba abantu abakhulu this day ayashukuma. And I would like to believe the community yakwamdingi, the community yasemGqakhwebe, the community yase-Eastern Cape at large, iyazidla ngawe ngomsebenzi. And moreover, ne-choice at this time oyithathileyo yento yokuba uze neligala losomakhwekhwetha welibandla lethu lamawisile utata uVido Nyobole. I think it was umbono otyalwe kuwe nguThixo And I want to say, Ndinga Ndakandemi, Sinawe ngemithandazo. And silikhaya siyavuya kakhulu because usenze salikhaya sazinca ngawe. Hence I always refer to you as the rose of the family. Wangakuthixo ke mntasekhaya ngamandla nakwezinye projects ezizayo, because I still believe there's a lot uThixo ayifakileyo kuwe. You are still going to write, and as I believe now, even your hand holding that pen cannot wait to get on to the next project. Ndiyabulela kakhulu.
Enkosi kakhulu, enkosi. Our next agenda item is to request Professor Smanga Khumalo to undertake a brief book review. Prof. Smanga.
Thank you, Program Director, Madam Presiding Bishop, the former bishops who are here, the General Secretary of the World Methodist Conference, Reverend Ivan Abrahams, everyone who is here. I salute you, and most importantly, take the opportunity to salute the two most important people in our midst, the biographer and the one whose biography has been written. What a joy it is indeed for us to assemble here as the Methodist people to celebrate this gift and milestone that Thelela has given to the church. I think we will be underestimating the impact of this book if we simply look at it as just the biography of Ubaba Nyobole. I think it is much bigger than that. It's a gift to the Methodist people, for in many ways, it tells the story of the Methodist Church. It tells the story of South Africa, especially apartheid South Africa, and how Black people, young Black people, had to grow under those difficult circumstances, and how the church walked alongside Black people as they were struggling to make sense of life in an apartheid country. That's the story that is being told here today. And I think we need to see it from that big perspective. What is also interesting, really, is that it is written by an unusual suspect. Usis Thelela here, no one would have actually thought that she would go ahead and write a book about the church. You would suspect that she would just write things about law, things about business, and all the other things that people run for and run about, and then they write. But she decided, and that's why I think I agree with Thembelani to say this is a calling from God, and it's a vision that came from God, that she could just took her time and reflect on the life of Ubaba Nyobole and write this magnificent book that helps us to understand the journey that he traveled in life. What she brings into this is also a woman's perspective in the story of Methodism and how Black women have experienced church leadership. That's a very important perspective that I pick up to this. To find a lay, and this is a lay person, you know, if it's a minister who is ordained, who writes a book about the church, we are expected anyway to do this because the church ordained us and it gave us education and all those sorts. You can sort of justify that this is our field. We were trained for that. Now you've got just a lay business woman who comes out and said, my voice matter in this church on how I have seen and experienced leadership. That is, it stands out in an amazing way that she could do that. And she brings in here an amazing power of her command of the two languages that she uses. She moves from the English language, which she's got so much command of that. In fact, I was talking to the publisher the other day about this, and he was simply saying to me, oh, her language is poetic. When she starts writing, he says, I found it so easy to publish the book because it was just a joy to read. And more than that, she brings in the Xhosa language. It's littered throughout the book. Very, very important idioms and sayings and even the clan names that she keeps throwing in and out of that. It's amazing. You celebrate the book. And then she goes further, like a Methodist. She keeps now and again quoting these hymns, Methodist hymns, now and again, and throwing them in there, so that you actually don't have to wonder who has written this book. This book is African by character, by the way she has papered it with the Xhosa language and the rich experiences of the Xhosa people. It's an honor to you, Babu Nyobole. I really see this as a gift, yes to you, but also to the Methodist people, more so because when you write a biography, it's one of those things that the person who writes gives their time, gives their resources to pay for publication and all those sorts of things, and gives their intellect. And Thelela here has not just told the story and compiled some story. She went on to do research, good research that I've done. Let me run through just the chapters quickly, because I'm aware we have to keep to time. Firstly, Thelela uses the theory of servanthood to look at Babu Nyobole, to understand and get into analyzing his journey into the ministry, and in fact, even into life in general. So she uses servanthood in chapter 1 as she comes in. And what is quite interesting is that the introductory part, when she comes in, she's got a picture of Babu Nyobole in the book where he is clad on his YMG uniform. So over and above the clerical shirt and collar that he has, she's got the YMG and in fact a uniform, and then she's got the hymn, his favorite hymn that he uses, and uses that as a point of entry into the conversation, which is very, very much exciting to do that. Who usually picks up the YMG as something that you can actually pick from to actually write a book? We forget them. We use the great theological terms and the theological sayings and all that, but she locates him within the passion of being a man in the Methodist Church and the role that he plays as a leader of other men also and exemplify them with his life. Secondly, chapter 2, she picks up the story. The chapter 2 is titled "A Minister of God's Word, Born to an Evangelist Family." Now, this is very, very important in my thinking, because what she does, she picks up Vido, Babu Nyobole's upbringing, brings up the family. If you think of evangelists, in fact, if we are fair to that, the evangelists are usually the most marginalized, exploited class of workers in the Methodist Church. That may sound a little bit problematic, but of course, that's the truth. But in fact, they are the ones who do the work that is amazing. They start church where there is no church. They go around, visit people. We ministers follow them. They guide us on where they have been and what they are doing. So circuits are there, are strong today through the sweat and blood of evangelists, most of whom remained unknown, remained unrecognized, remained poorly paid, and they've even been lost out of memory. But she brings them back to life by telling the story of Babu Nyobole. And so we celebrate them, and they did not only do that work, they also gave a leader to the Methodist Church. Let me go to chapter 3, The Road to Ministry, where she tells how he came into the ministry, the journey that he traveled. Beautiful story there when he meets with Ubaba Alex Borain, and then meets with Ubaba Batman. And then he's not really this figure who's promising that one day will rise. In fact, we may not even know that at the time he was working as a petrol attendant in Cape Town, in one of the garages in Cape Town, and comes not even being sure to offer that he wants to be part of this youth thing, and then the NYLTP that was happening in Durban, and jokes aside, and he applies and is accepted, and the journey begins. So it comes from the humble beginnings from that perspective when you look at that. Chapter 4 tells us, gives us a picture of Ubaba Nyobole moving now, being this activist priest, one who is holding the faith and the ministry on the other side, but is also this activist who is having confrontations now and again with the system, the political system of the time of apartheid. Wonderful story there of how he resisted the system and how he suffered under that, but continued. And in his journey, does not only get confined in the church, but also go and work for other institutions outside the church, where he is walking the fine line between God and Caesar. That's what, from a theological perspective, would locate his journey. It was between God and Caesar at the same time. Chapter 5, where we see him coming in and zooming into his family and the struggles, like any other person, of having to go through the struggle of raising a family and be a Methodist minister with children, with your spouses and all that. Younger ministers like us and others will have a lot to read and learn from that journey that he traveled there. Then the next part, chapter 6, is when he got into the helm of the Methodist Church, when he became the general secretary. One of the very exciting things that we usually forget, how he landed into this very, very powerful position. He wasn't your usual suspect that he could just easily get into that position. No, in fact, at that time, he was in a secular position that he was holding, that he was pulled from there. Not everybody. We get to secular world, we get forgotten from the church, but he gets remembered, and the church can't forget him. The leadership of the Black Methodist Consultation remembers him and goes and invites him and picks him up, and he comes. He runs this massive organization. The Methodist people, over 3 million people, are accountable to him, and he runs the church with so much integrity and dignity in that office as he was leading. Then the next one is chapter 7, where the author then reminds us that actually ministers don't retire, because even when he had taken rest to be at home, even before he was called to be given some other assignments that are much more demanding. Just the fact that you'd always hear people talking about him picking up his Sunday plan to go and preach in his local church when planned by his minister, giving communion, and then the connection, going around the connection, addressing us and the different conferences and conventions and all that, and acclimately being called to assist in SMMS for a brief time, and then going back, continuing with this ministry that he is doing, he has done for the church. Then there are appendices that Thelela gives us. The appendices gives us a few speeches of Nyobole. That's when we hear Reverend Nyobole speaking with his own voice, speaking to us with his own voice. And so this book is an amazing gift to the Methodist people. It's an amazing gift to all South Africans. It's an opportunity for us to look back and say, wow, we thank God for Thelela's work, for her gift as a prolific writer, a scholar of note in her own way. I've had conversations with her during the writing of this book, and in fact, you can hardly believe that this book has not taken long. It was researched, it was worked upon, it was drafted, it was built within a limited space of time. And so we thank God we are able to say this gift that has been given to the Methodist people will stay, and through it, Ubaba Nyobole has been written into history. History will never forget him, and indeed, history will keep smiling on Thelela for having written this book. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Khumalo. Thank you for a beautiful chronological thematic overview of this book. Thank you for your profound insights and your reflections. Thank you most sincerely. Ladies and gentlemen, we move to request the presiding Bishop of the Methodist Church of South Africa, Reverend Purity Malinga, to give us a congratulatory word. Bishop Malinga.
Moderator, and all the guests, all protocols observed, I greet everybody in the precious name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. On behalf of the Methodist people, to whom this book is a gift, as Professor Khumalo has just said, I just want to firstly thank the author, Thelela, for giving the Methodist Church this gift. I didn't have a privilege of seeing the book before this time. And so I've just heard from Professor Khumalo what it contains. And indeed, it is a book that it would be worth reading for all Methodist people, but particularly for ministers in the Methodist Church. So I want to thank you, Thelela, for using the gift that God has given you. Writing a book is not a small matter. It's not something that everybody can do, but it's something that those who are gifted in doing are able to do. The professor has commented on your use of language, your use of words. That is a particular gift that we have used to put this book together. And we thank God that you are using the gift that God has given to you for the good of God's church, but particularly for the good of the Methodist people. So I want to congratulate you as an author and thank you for the work that you have put into this book. As many of us, maybe in our generations going back, there has always been names of ministers in particular that would be well known. But as time goes on, their names would fade, because while the names would be known, but nobody would know exactly who this person was and how did this person contribute to the Methodist Church. And so in this book, then, you have lifted up the name of one of our ministers who's well known and well respected. And so all generations to come will not just know the name of Vido Nyobole, but they will know who he was and what he has contributed to the Methodist Church and to the Methodist ministry. Thank you so much, Sisi, for doing that. If bengizazi duko, bengizozisho, but angizazi, but your cousin has done that for us at the beginning. So I am joining him in thanking you ngeziduko zakho kwenu. Secondly, I want to congratulate and celebrate my big brother, Umkhuluwa, Reverend Vido Nyobole, and the family, but in particular, Reverend Nyobole. But your love for the church and your contribution to the church has gone a long way. Your contribution to the church, particularly at that apartheid time, is well known. Your ability and passion of mentoring and teaching the young and helping them understand what ministry is about, that gift that you have given to the Methodist Church, nobody can take that away from you. You have actually produced not just ministers, but leaders of the Methodist Church. And that is the ministry that God had given to you. And I am so happy that it is documented so that future generations can learn from it. I have not worked closely with my brother, except at the time when he was the General Secretary of Conference, where I observed his seriousness about work, his diligence, his integrity, and I think his consciousness about time, about things that must be done at the right time. And in a way, I was calling him a slave driver, because he really would push. And if your report is 10 minutes, it is 10 minutes and not more than that. And all those things which are actually good from someone who is in leadership. And so I have all the respect for you, brother, and I congratulate you on this effort that has been put together to write your biography. I believe that everybody's life is a book from which the present and future generations can learn and unlearn stuff. And when you allow people to write a biography about your life story, you are actually making yourself vulnerable and opening yourself up for everybody to see and understand your life. So thank you for allowing your life to be, and your ministry to be in the eyes of everybody, and so that people can learn those things that are worth learning from your life and your ministry. Your generation, Nyobole generation, will always be proud of you. And as a church, we will remain proud of you. May God then bless you on this special day. And I truly, truly wish you well and celebrate what has been done for you today by Thelela. Thank you so much. And I do hope that Thelela's example is going to be learned by particularly younger Methodists to say, we have a contribution to make to the church using the gifts that our God has given us. Whatever gifts those are, if it is writing, let our young people write and stories about people, about events, and ensure that this church keeps those stories that will make it a better Methodist church. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you, Bishop Malinga, for the congratulatory words. I think that in drawing our attention to the coalescence and convergence of gifting that we're about today, that this book is a gift, that Thelela is using her gifting, and that Reverend Vido Nyobole is not only a gift to the church, but a gift to South Africa at large. Thank you, Bishop Malinga. May we then proceed to request Bishop Ivan Abrams to also give us a congratulatory message.
Moderator and the Methodist people, thank you for this opportunity. I had the privilege of writing the foreword to this gift to the Methodist people. Tonight I am reminded of Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican writer, Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist, who says a people without the knowledge of their past history, origins, and culture is like a tree without roots. And this book shares how deep the roots are that grounded Vido Nyobole. Thank you, Thelela, for the gift to not just to Vido, but to your gift to the Methodist Church of Southern Africa and your gift to all of us. And as you celebrate, we as a people celebrate. This book also tells us that before the popular cliche Black Lives Matter, is that we knew that Black is beautiful, and we knew that we matter. Thelela, your writing is a lodestar for many of us who aspire to write ourselves back into history. It is very interesting if we look at the general history of the church and the history, especially of the Methodist Church, that many people have written about us and that many people have sought to write us out of history. I mean, who can write a person like Vido out of history, especially when it comes to theological education? He was one of those people who were in the trenches and who opened the doors, and I might even go further to say who lifted the foundations at Rhodes University, because in the past that doors and that hallowed ground was closed to Black Methodist ministers. It is just great that we can celebrate Vido. I've also had the rare privilege of working with Vido and of being with him at both FEDSEM and at Rhodes University. And he is the embodiment of transformation in so many ways. I don't want to belabor that point, but he dared to dream of possibilities beyond reality. And again, he lived through the nightmare of the 1970s and 80s. But one theme that was constant is unless we can dream of a different future, we cannot change the present. That was what Vido embodied. And thank you, Vido. Thank you, Thelela. We are all written back into history, and we all celebrate with you. Every blessing.
Bishop Abrams, are you still there?
I am. I've concluded Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I lost you for a minute. Thank you most sincerely for your words of support. Thank you for emphasizing Vido as an embodiment of transformative leadership, as an embodiment of a leader that imagines a different future. Thank you most sincerely. We now proceed to request Thelela's research supervisor, Professor King Costa, to make a few brief comments.
Well, thank you, Program Director. I greet you all, everybody in this place, in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I recognize all protocol observed. My work is to really look at, talk about the author and her research competence attached to our institution. Our institution, called the Global Center for Academic Research, looks for people who are actually passionate about research, but research that focuses on promoting indigenous Southern epistemologies. And you look at the work of Thelela and her astuteness, her passion. She brings in such vigor, energy, and coherence and logic, focusing on developing this area of research on Southern epistemologies. The work she's done on this book is just part of the great work she's doing here with us, together with our team. I've seen some of them, Prof. Nis and others are in here, and I recognize you as well. So Thelela, what she actually looks like, or her orientation, is within social biography. And within social biography, she puts up an experience that she's gathered over the years, and takes all those experiences and is able to embody her personal experiences in actually giving an account of a particular phenomenon. On this particular project, where she is actually writing on the works of Reverend Nyobole, you look at her work in relation with the other literary pieces that have actually been given out by scholars. One of them is here. Reverend Vuyani wrote a piece on Vido Nyobole with regard to his work as an equiper of the saints. And if you look at those aspects and other stories that are out there, I see some of the speakers here as well, that they've actually commented on him in their dissertations in different universities. So you will see how she collects that and comes up with a beautiful narrative that is now able to be consumed from the abstractions of academic research that we're finding. She's now taking it out and putting all these stories, putting them together and making them consumable to every person out of academia. That is a particular skill. But look at this. When she writes, she takes still the academic requirements and puts there. For instance, you see her book has got coherence, has got logic, but not just coherence and logic. She also is able to provide an epistemological foundation through her sound references at the back. So you are able to know that this is actually dealing with issues of bias, particularly because she comes from the same denomination. So it's got nothing to do so much with how she looks up to the particular phenomenon she's writing about, but she's actually substantiating that with accounts that are verifiable. So the book, as a person reads the book, is able to relate, is able to actually go to these accounts, to these experiences, and actually be part of them. So this is what good research is about. At the Global Center for Academic Research, we are actually appealing with our researchers and to try and come up with a blend and nexus between abstractions and practicalities. And this is a product, one of the products. We are working on quite a number of products. Please keep watching this space in 2 years' time and see what is coming out. I'm not going to talk a lot about what is reflected on the book, because you'll see that there's another book chapter that is coming out later this year on the life of Mandela. So you'll see that she is tracing and tracking leaders who've made an impact. But what I like about this project in terms of research work is the ability to blend spiritual leadership, servanthood leadership, with transformational leadership, yet there's some form of transaction. The presiding bishop, Purit Malinga, did allude to that, where you look at the life of the principal being discussed here, his ability to actually create order while transforming the people. This comes out of the story. So when you read her, if you look at this book, you look at it in terms of research, really, I commend her working with her as her research supervisor on a project, because now her research work is able to be consumable. But a lot of work is still coming out of this. So I'm saying to you, everybody that has come to actually be part of this occasion, watch this place. She is actually still coming up with greater stuff on research, particularly on Southern epistemologies. For so many times, we've been looking up to Northern epistemologies. We believe that research is research when we look at the approaches to the North, but she's taking it down. We're working with her and other scholars to actually take it from down and bring it up, so that South African epistemologies as well could be part of global approaches to research. Thanks a lot, moderator.
Hello.
You are still muted, moderator. You are still muted.
Sorry, colleagues. Sorry, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you most sincerely, Professor Costa. I think your comments are critical because they cause us to think about the contribution of this book to knowledge creation, the contribution of this book to an African epistemological framework, her contribution to the research endeavor, and essentially her contribution to knowledge as an insider, as a Methodist, talking about Methodism and about leadership in the Methodist context. But what I also found interesting was the latter part of your contribution, where you talk about the intersectionality of transactional leadership, transformational leadership, servant leadership, collective leadership, and strategic leadership. Thank you most sincerely for forcing us to reflect on the scholarly value of this book. We then proceed to request Dr. Sidwell Mahudu, who was Reverend Nyobole's mentee, to provide us with some comments. Thank you, Bishop. Over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator. I know your dad, where he's lying, wishes me to be a doctor. I will work hard to do that. Let's get that one right. It's still an aspiration. Reverend Nyobole and I smoke the same pipe. And this is the pipe. It is a very famous pipe that he and I smoke. We call each other comrades in suffering. And so I greet my comrade in suffering. I greet the leadership of our church and of society who are gathered here. I'm very sure that there is a communion of saints that we need to acknowledge, a cloud of ancestors who are gathered over this event, whether you talk Nkatazo Bartman and Rulo Saba, whether you talk Virginia Kabashe, you talk Linda Mieza, whether you talk Dr. Kozam Gojo or Simon Kubule, they are here, and many others, young nonopis of this world, are gathered here around us, including the great evangelist whose son we are celebrating here this evening. And so, a congratulatory message on the launch of the book. Moderator and friends, I have accepted the privilege and the honor to speak and make remarks at this book launch. And I look at it as a noble and a sacred task. I do not come to it lightly. There are many of my generation and other generations after us that could have come here to speak. I've noted on Facebook and in the chat that there are those who are even of a generation younger than me who speak well of the contribution of Dr. Nyobole on them. Ivan Samdan or his wife Jenny could have been speaking here. Their friend Madika Sibeko could have been chosen to speak here. The current chairperson of the Black Methodist Consultation, Nomsa Nomkolo, or the former chair, Mzwandile Molo, were other choices worthy, so to say. Mbulelo Bikwana, that you asked to pray in Cape Town, could have been the most eloquent to speak here. Or we could have recalled from up yonder in heaven a Norman Shatwayo, or a Selby Madwe, or a Jackie Joste, or a Mandla Gamede to come and rescue us. And so I do not take this work lightly as I come to speak here. I recognize that I stand and represent many generations. There are many from a legion of younger generations who could also have come here to testify here of the person or the stature and the gifts and talents of Reverend Vido Nyobole. Many of us come from three interrelated circles of Methodists. That is the Methodist Christian Education and Youth Department, the CEYD of the MCSA, the Black Methodist Consultation, the BMC, and the National Youth Leadership Training Program, NYLTP, that has been referred to, that Vido led. I am a product of his CEYD ministry in the connection in general. And something that many people do not know, that youth university called Modeport, in particular, where many of us who went to train there, and people like Mzwandile Molo are jealous of us in that regard. I remain an unapologetic and loyal member of the BMC, where he was later to be chair and graciously handed over to me the baton as I succeeded him as chairperson of the BMC. And I emphasize he did that graciously. Friends, a mentor is someone who guides and shows the way to a novice in a particular vocation, such as it has been our relationship. A mentor provides leadership and model the vocation to the mentee. The mentoring arrangement may be formal and direct with set rules of engagement. It may also be something that is informal and indirect without clear sessions. Whatever the arrangement, a mentoring relationship has got to be intentional. And that is what Vido has given us in our interaction with him. His engagements were not by the way casual interactions, but have been intentional. Anybody who is appointed to the ministry to train and develop youth or equip the saints is a mentor and a coach of sort. They are more than just a position holder. They are more than just a coordinator of events or an administrator of systems and processes. They are exemplary witnesses and embodiments of what needs to be nurtured, developed, and produced. They are the actual product of that which they seek to produce. More than anything, an authentic mentor is one who offers themselves to those that they are guiding. They don't give theory, they give more than theories and guidelines. They give of themselves. They bring to the mentoring relationship a true self. not a disguise, not a mask, not a persona that is hidden. They come to that relationship, as I celebrate Vido, with their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. The mentee may know their strengths, they may know their talents and gifts, as many of us have known him, but they also, the mentees, come to know the flaws, the shortcomings, and even failures of the mentor, because the mentor does not hide, come fragile and give of themselves. A good mentee receives the person of the mentor with grace and respect, and they seek to allow even the wounds and the tears of the mentor to shape them. And this is what this servant of all season has given to us. Allow me to be bold to say, so has our relationship with Vido has been. Somebody has spoken, Professor Kumalo, about how the PMC went and called him during his vulnerability, and he would know what I'm talking about. This relationship has been of us as mentor and mentees, and I'm speaking in plural, not just for Sidwell Mohotu. It has been shaped in rhythmic arrangements of distance and proximity. It has been through large gathering services with the mentor standing there in a fiery pulpit, as Vido would give you, and the mentee sitting in the pew with admiration. It has been informal settings of learning with the mentor teaching theories of theology, of philosophy, and imparting content that nurtured our minds. It has been informal, robust debates with emotions that are handled as a gift to signal the intensity and the importance of the issue at hand, because that is what our interactions in the BMC and in the Modeport have been. We have been intellectual, we have gone into mental rigor, but we never pushed our emotions aside. And when we dealt with things, especially in the 80s and early 90s that were emotional, he did not come cold to us. He brought his true self, and that's why I talk of his vulnerability. It has been in conversation arrangements where even our ideologies, our theologies, and our spiritualities were exchanged as gifts to each other. So we don't talk about the Vido, the educationist, the Vido, the intellectual. We also talk about his ideologies. We know he's a hardcore Pan-Africanist, and I will talk about that just now. We have handled with Vido uncomfortable discussions with him and even disagreed. But that we did with love, with clear boundaries that this is Umkhuluwa. And I raise and invoke this concept of Umkhuluwa as a strong, powerful concept, because I've been saying to young ministers, if awunaye usisi, awunaye Umkhuluwa in the ministry, you are poorer. And we did this with clear boundaries and respect, and this respect never diminished. We laughed, we joked, we teased him, but we knew Gumkhuluwa. And so I want to talk also about authentic mentors. Emphatic and confident mentors do not impose themselves and produce photocopies. We are not Vido's photocopies. Reverend Nyobole has allowed for difference of opinion and embraced diversity. This animated preacher who breaks pulpits has not influenced us to be or do the same. The trust property committees of churches where we have preached in has never had to submit any insurance claims because we broke pulpits. But we love him, even with the cost to our property that came with his preaching. As a follower and a disciple of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, Stephen Biko, and even Paulo Freire, that he is, he allowed our own critical thinking and critical consciousness to emerge and to grow. A die-hard Pan-Africanist that he is, he tolerated and accepted in a mature way, for instance, my non-racial Congress charterist politics at that time. He allowed us to grow in our own politics. I remember how Mbulelo Bikwana and I, on the one hand, together with Ngcetane Nyobole, used to lead sharp and robust ideological arguments about the execution of our struggle, both at connectional youth gatherings, but also in BMC gatherings. But people like Vido would allow us to be who we are. People like Vido poisoned us. It must be noted today. They poisoned us with their theologies and their philosophies and their ideologies. We obliged, and we, Vido, carry wounds of arrest, of burning orders, of torture because of what you did to us. As I go to the conclusion, I want to say people like Mbulelo Bikwana remain friends and brothers despite of how we differed ideologically. And that was bequeathed. Space, a safe space and environments were created by people like Vido. At the end, moderator, I take this moment to congratulate and celebrate the dream, the effort and hard labor of love of our sister, Thelela Ngcetane Vika, the recording of history and preservation of the heritage of African people who were treated as nobodies is a noble mission. We need to up our game, as the presiding bishop said, to move from the oral tradition that has sustained us for centuries and use technologies to bequeath to generations to come who we are and where we come from. To capture and tell Black stories that the dominant culture still want to annihilate is a sacred vocation. Such a noble task provides Black people with a powerful form of agency. It is a radical protest to those who, like Tony Leon, continue to see Black leaders as failed experiments. He is not an unfortunate, isolated opinion, that is Tony Leon. It is more than just a sentiment. What he carries and articulates is a belief, unfortunately, that is held by many, even amongst white folk who we worship with in the MCSA. The culture of writing and documenting our heroes' biographies is a welcome contribution towards dismantling the white hegemony that still has its grip on our beloved church. May this, that Thelela has done, be an inspiration for many of our people to reveal and to document the many hidden stories of our leaders and people. This is what the BMC's initiated Center for Black Thought and African Studies, which is in partnership with Seth Mokitimi Methodist Seminary, is about. It is about researching, advocating, and publishing material on Black thought and African history. And Thelela has showed us the way. Thank you very much.
Bishop Mahudu, wow. Sincere gratitude to you for mobilizing the ancestors of Methodism, reminding us that there are ancestors of Methodism that hover over tonight's event and are extremely grateful for what we are doing tonight. Thank you for reminding us that Vido was symbolic. He was a leader who's a coach. He was a leader who's a mentor. He was a leader who incubated and created leaders who were sovereign and independent in their capacity to think. Leaders who could think and reflect on what leadership is in South Africa today and the intersectionality between that and the church. Thank you for also evoking the proximity of mentorship, the emotional connectivity of it, and the emotional connection that occurs between mentor and mentee. Thank you most sincerely for such a beautiful reflection. Ladies and gentlemen, we will move on to request comments from friends of Reverend Vido Nyobole. There are 3 of them, Mr. Jagavula, Professor Mboya, and Dr. Vugile Mehana. May we start with Mr. Jagavula, please?
Thank you, moderator, the leadership of our church, and all your participants. It is indeed a great privilege for me to have been asked as one of the friends of Vido to participate in the launch of this book. I've known Vido for many, many years. And I want to start by thanking Thelela on behalf of all of us as friends for the task successfully achieved and for the hard work that brought the life journey of Vido Nyobole to light for us and the generation to come, as we'll be in a position to read and know who this giant has been. Thank you so much, Thelela. We truly appreciate the sacrifice as well as the time and everything that you spent in order to make sure that you achieve. To my friend Vido, that I've known for more than 50 years now, we had occasions of working together, traveling together, sleeping together. We have now become not only friends, but brothers to each one, to each other. Throughout the life that I've known him, I have observed the many gifts that Vido has. And I am so excited to observe that many other people observe the same gifts that I have been aware of. Vido has spent time, amongst other things that he did, going throughout the connection and outside the connection to the neighboring states, where he has been running the empowerment programs in order to develop the lay leaders of our church, because he believed that when the lay leaders, who are the support structure to the ministers, understand the role and the duties, then the church would be successful. I remember when we were young people, the play he wrote, which was entitled Ibunguza, which was a way of challenging injustices in the then Siskai government. I remember when he attended a funeral with Reverend Batman, I think one of the ministers in those days, in trying to show an honor and started shooting, but pointed at Vido's leg. And he shot Vido in the leg, but funny enough, Reverend Baltman was the one who fell down, and Reverend Nyobole remained standing. Because of the time I've been given, I don't want to spoil the program. I want to say to you, my friend Vido, well done. You have been a model of what the church expects from its minister. Continue the wonderful work. We are proud of you. Thank you, moderator.
Enkosi Putzandile, Enkosi. May we then proceed to request some comments from Professor Mboya. Prof, are you there? Prof, if you're not there, I'm going to request Budvugile.
Prof is muted. Prof is trying to talk. He's muted.
Is he trying to talk? Because, yeah. Prof, unmute yourself.
He's outsourcing it.
So, I mean, I know that Vido selected me to be moderator because of my respect for time and efficiency. Budvugile, are you getting ready?
He has unmuted.
Budvuks?
No, Prof has unmuted.
Is the Prof mute? Okay, Prof, are you ready?
Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, of course I can.
Okay. All protocol.
Over to you,
hello.
Prof. Over
Moderator?
to you.
Could I talk now?
You. Yes,
thank you.
Do.
Moderator, all protocol observed. Vido Nyobole, a friend in literary works. I have known Vido as a reader, a researcher, an intellectual with editorial experience and broad-mindedness within the church. He has been an inspiration in my life. And we used to sit together and look at the writings of Africans within the church. I want to quote the books that he has commented on, which I feel might be useful to us to know the kind of a man Vido is. There is a book called Amazwi Angawokugqibela kaYesu emnqamlezweni. And this book is written by Richard Ngwanya. This is what Vido said at the end of the book. Mkhonzi woThixo ophilayo, ngokuthunywa kwakho umayela ukuze abantu beve, ukuze bakholwe. Vuma ukuthunywa nguThixo nangabantu bakhe, ukwazi ukutsho xa ubuzwa ukuba wenze ntoni na ngetalente oyinikiweyo. This is an intellectual. And here is another book that he commented on that I felt might be of interest to us. This book was written by Bishop Mlibongewu, and the title is Ukusuka eGetsemane ukuya eGolgotha. I want to quote Vido kwisingeniso sale ncwadi as an intellectual. I quote, "Le ncwadi ibhalwe ngulo kaNgewu
Ilelinye lamalinge okuxhobisa abangcwele ukuba bawenze ngempumelelo umsebenzi abawabelweyo wokwakha ibandla elingumzimba kaKristu. The third book that I want to refer to as a person who is open-minded in his approach. It's a book that has been written by Dr. Mvumelwano Dandala. And the title of the book is Umnyama, the Rainbow. Vido said in the cover of the book, Dandala's experiences, the love that he has for his country and its people, serves as a source of inspiration for the young and the old, a gallery for the generation to come. His voice is a representation of strong feeling and with the sole purpose of inspiring the human race. Each poem in his book has a contribution that blends superbly in this sophisticated ensemble. Last but not least, Vido was broad-minded when I met with him. He commented on a book, The Bantu Presbyterian Church in South Africa, Its Origin and History by Mbulelo Nzo. Vido says in the book, this is a book to be read by all, irrespective of as it promises to engender debate, self-reflection, engagement, and discussion within and beyond the church. This is a friend I truly respect for what he believes in and how important the intellectual world is, and what the contribution
Colleagues, am I the only one who's lost the professor?
We have lost him.
We've lost the professor.
Yeah, we did.
We've lost him. Okay, colleagues, I'm actually going to request that you allow me to, while the professor tries to reconnect, to perhaps request Budvuks, if you're available, Budvuks, to give us your commentary, and then perhaps the professor can conclude after Budvuks.
Thank you very much. Good evening, all people of God. The presiding bishop of our church, Reverend Purity Malinga, the past presiding bishops, I see Father Abrams and Father Siwa, the bishops who are here, those who have superannuated and those who are active, the moderator of this very professionally held evening, and of course, the author, who is the reason for us to gather here this evening, her contributors in the book, and the whole editorial team that has assisted in putting that book together, colleagues in the ministry and friends and relatives and people of God. Let me echo as well my special words of deep gratitude to Thelela for this outstanding work that she has been able to put together in a very short space of time, as we learned. As much as I have not been able to get a copy, but Professor Khumalo has whet my appetite to try and run to the next bookshop where it is available and get a copy. It is indeed a special privilege for me as one of the friends of esteemed Reverend Nyobole and Mama Nyobole, who is beautifully sitting next to him. Good evening, Kazi. To be part of making few remarks about what has happened this evening, the launch of the book about, I don't call him my friend, I call him my elder brother. The reason why he's the elder brother, I met him when I was about 15, 16 years old, and he was about 19, 20 years old. In Cape Town in the early 70s, when he came there, and he was a youth worker in our circuit and also a superintendent in our local Sunday school, where he promoted me to become one of the teachers at the Sunday school. And for that made us to be colleagues. But more than that, from there, I was privileged. After I've been accepted in the ministry, to be sent to the circuit where he was born. And I was received in that circuit by his elder sister, who became a big sister to me, and later by Mama and Dada Govebak. And I became part of the family. And since then, I have always looked up to Vido as not only a friend, but a very, very important elder brother to me, who has been there with me as I traversed the journey in the ministry. And I will always be ever grateful and indebted to him for all the guide and all the counseling and the reprimand and love that he gave to me during the journey. We have worked together in various places, and he has always been a source of my inspiration. So he's not just a friend to me. He's a true, true brother, through bright days and through dark days. He has been a very special friend. And I'm not saying that lightly. I say that with very deep emotions when I say that. And I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you, Vido, and Sisingazi for always being these parental, close friends to me. I just want to say I'm touched very deeply by the title of this book. And I think Thelela must have prayed very hard for the revelation of God to bring this title, the servant for all seasons. And these are very powerful two words, to be a servant. And when you put that servanthood, traversing different kinds of seasons. And those seasons are not there in the pie in the sky. They are seasons that we go through and experience them as we're in the journey of life. And Thelela brings together, as Professor Khumalo said, these very important guides of life. So when this title is like that, to put Vido, I think it's a very befitting a title for him. And it is extremely instructive to us who have grown under him and is under his guidance. That's why one is looking forward to read with deep meaning what will be the content of that book, because we have gone through various seasons and we have tried our best to be servants, trying to emulate him as he has been the guide to us. Noting this epithet, the word servant. Biblically, it is a very thought-provoking phrase that has occupied especially many Old Testament scholars. I can think of one scholar who was, Old Testament scholar, who was a favorite to me when we were at Rhodes, a man called Gerhard von Rad, a German scholar, in his book, Old Testament Theology. As he goes through that book, he gets to a point of articulating what a servant means. And he picks up through a poetic chapters where he picks up the 7 songs of the people who give praise to God in a humble way. Therefore, von Rad summarizes this phrase, which I think must have been inspiration to the writer, summarizes what is the meaning of a servant in the context of worshiping God and being one of those who have been called by God. He says this phrase, servant, means the servant is God's agent to do God's work in this world. If anything, Vido has been as a servant, he has been God's agent to do God's work in this world. Everything else I've heard this evening, I find it within the context of that definition by von Rad. And as one who has been close to Vido, I can also attest to the fact that he tried his best to be a loyal and passionate servant to do God's work. And I want to say to you, Vido, we have been there, we have seen you. We have tried our best to emulate you. One line which I always appreciate as you were mentoring me, Mfwasenkosin, let us not be friends on the basis of wrong things. And that is a fundamental guide and the compass of life, because a true friend is a person who must ensure that you don't agree about something wrong. There must be ability to say to one another, to express the true and deep love. When you are wrong, we are wrong. And say it with love and respect. And that is what I have lent to you. And I can say that Von Rand goes on to pick what I believe the servant for all seasons Vido has been, as I've observed him as a close person next to him. Vido has been this servant who has tried through his 40 years of ministry to ensure that he brings justice to the nations, especially our nation. He has been spared and unspared. He has been loved and hated. He has been embraced and made an outcast for the sake of ensuring that justice prevails within the parameters of his influence. Vido has been this servant who I've seen raising up, restoring and preserving the heartbroken during the course of his ministry. We have consumed that. We are witnesses of that. We have seen him wiping our tears. We have seen him with us throughout his ministry. He never ministered for himself, but he ministered for the people of God. And we want to give thanks to you, Vido. Vido has been this servant who has been there to bring light and be God's salvation to God's people. He did not only preach gospel, he lived the salvation so that people, when they look at him, they don't see or hear what comes out of his lips, but they look at how he disposes and dispenses the gospel of Jesus as a salvation for all of us who came across with him. And I want to say to you, sir, thank you very much. Vido has been this servant who has been, through his tenacious faith, he made sure that he dispenses God's word in a manner that touched the depth of the hearts of the lost so that they can find God and have a reliable compass of life. And we have seen him doing that. And thank you for your servanthood. You have been this servant who is given by God a tongue to teach and encourage the people who God has put before you. I was listening to Bishop Mkhotu as he was extremely articulating the recipients of how you have been able to allow God to utilize your tongue so that out of what it comes from your tongue, it is as if thank you for your teachings, and thank you for living out your teachings for us. That is why, brothers and sisters, Reverend Nyobole is that servant for all seasons. When it is cold, he remains a trusted servant. When it is hot, he remains that trusted servant. When it is raining, he remains an umbrella of hope. And when it is hot, he remains that shadow that covers you. We give thanks to God for your life. And we give thanks to God for who you have been. In order to be this servant, it was not a mistake within God's plan that you had to minister beyond the pulpit, because a servant like you cannot be confined by the pulpit. God did not love those who goes to church. God loved the world. That is why we give thanks to our church to give you the opportunity to go and be God's servant in God's world, in all what you have done within the church and within the society. It sums up to be a true servant of God, an agent for his world. Therefore, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because we've seen you as a dynamic evangelist, which you have taken over from your father, Kovebak. Many souls have been saved. Thank you for being this special visionary missiologist who have watched you being very, very, very committed to the mission of the church. Your missiology, it will always be remembered within the context of the church. Thank you for ensuring that the church lays within the parameters of its ecclesiology so that we don't become a lost church. We're a church that will be able to uphold the dignity that we received from those fathers and mothers, and many from whom Sidwell has mentioned. And thank you for that. You have been a very profound and meticulous administrator. Our church took its place very proudly within the League of Ecumenical Life because you were there and took your ministry seriously. When we say MCO speaks, everybody knew that behind that word, there's a meticulous administrator who takes the Church of God serious. You have been a compassionate, passionate pastor to all those who came before you. And we give thanks to God for saving lives through the power of the Holy Spirit who empowered you. You have been this transcendental leader who has been able to discharge your responsibility with love and deep commitment to all those who needed your help. This is therefore to honor you. But I want to say thank you, Thelela. This honor is long overdue. But thank you that God spoke through you, through the prowess of your academic responsibilities to ensure that we are here today, ready to read the works of Vido. We will ever be grateful to you, sir, for your unjudging love. We will ever be grateful for your pastoral counseling. We will ever be grateful to you because you are who you are. You are not a fake. You are genuine. And we receive this gift that has been put before us. And we say to God, thank you. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Budvuks. To the trio of friends, what a beautiful tribute. What a beautiful tribute to bonds of friendship, to bonds of intellectual connection, to bonds of pure love, to bonds of loyalty through all seasons, to bonds of respect, to friendship bonds of meaning and of human elevation. What a beautiful tribute. Thank you to all three of you. We will now proceed, colleagues, to item where we request messages of support. We have a message of support which I've been requested to read, and we've also got a video. So may I suggest that I read at least one of the messages of support? I know many have been received, but owing to time, we cannot read all of them. So I'll read at least one, and then I'll request the video to be flighted after I've read this message of support. I've been requested to read a message of support from Dr. Nkosazana Zuma. It reads as follows: Dear Thelela, your offering on the life and times of Reverend Nyobole couldn't have come at a more opportune time in the history of this country confronted by COVID and our Congress movement which is most challenged with recalling its roots and strategic mission. We will all recall that Reverend Nyobole lived by example. You may also recall that his talk at the inaugural Leadership and Investment Symposium organized by the Black Methodist Consultation, wherein he reminded us that, I quote, Christian leadership inevitably refers to a leadership model that reflects the leadership style of Jesus Christ in everything he did. Christ led by the power of the example. Moreover, he never told people what to do or how to do things without him being prepared to do that himself, unquote. Thus, Vido's leadership style displays true servant leadership, not just in the Methodist Church, but in all facets of our struggle. That it was a young Black woman and a child of our struggle who became a global citizen, who got to capture his life and the times, is a monumental feat in itself. Far too few young women are involved and recognized in the ongoing story of our development as a nation and as a people. Yours is a contribution young and older women should emulate. Like Reverend Nyobole, you have once again proven that women of all walks of life, race and ages can be fearlessly inspiring. Women, too, have had a lasting impact that has been felt. No. That has been felt beyond the institutions they served and continue to serve. You have inspired all of us and continue to toil for a better Africa and a world. I'm proud that you've chosen to use your pen to document the rich history of the Methodist Church and how it can further shape the narratives on restorative justice, servant leadership, and above all, humility worldwide. I know that your parents and ancestors are smiling upon you right now. I applaud them for nurturing an African literary scholar at a time that our continent and our country is most in need. I wish you success for the launch and enduring strength as you continue to tell the important stories of our people and the African child. Kosigeleli Africa, yours sincerely, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. There were many other messages of support, but we decided that we would read this particular one. And at this point, before I hand over to Thelela herself, I will then request that the video be flighted, but Thelela, over to you. And I just wanted to say to you, Thelela, that I come from a family of writers, from my parents to my generation to our children, and you're an outstanding and phenomenal writer. What a beautiful read this was. Over to you, Thelela.
So good evening, all Presiding Bishop, Bishop Malinga, from Presiding Bishops. I'm seeing the screen dwindling, so I'm not sure whether they want to play video or shall I go on?
I think you should proceed, and then then the video is uploaded subsequent to your commentary.
Yes, thank you, moderator, and all the beloved leaders of our church, leaders in society, fellow Methodists, and friends and scholars from here and from other parts of the world. We've been joined by some of the scholars in the places I work for. I am attached and do a bit of work at Oxford University in the UK. In the Said Business School, I'm the assessor there. They have joined and I'm grateful for that. it has been a learning opportunity to discover me as a leader and the models and try to adapt the Western models to the African, or at least begin to understand how can we begin to have our own models. So Oxford afforded me that opportunity. And I'm very grateful. I'm also attached as a researcher at the Global Center for Academic Research. Professor Costa is my supervisor, and I'm grateful for everything, harnessing my scholarship. And it is also intimidating to speak in their presence. I've seen quite a few professors from the global research, because they're gonna ask me, Thelela, what is your ontology? Thelela, what is your, where is the research statement? All those kind of things. So I feel intimidated. But more importantly, Reverend Nyobole, the subject of my writing, and your family, and I'm so grateful that you deemed it fit, at least you allowed me when I approached you with this, because I had to reflect deeply for a number of reasons. This book, Vido, and everyone who has really, really graced this event, I just want you to take it to my confidence. I'm a storyteller, I've discovered that. So I wrote this book from a very broken place in my heart. I was bleeding, I was hurting. I had gone through pain, I had gone through disappointments life had taken me to. I have gone to the lowest ebbs of life. I had seen the proverbial human condition. People sometimes I trusted the most, hurt me the most. And when I decided to embark on this, I was helped by few people, but one of those was the late Untitled Chapter. Many of you would know that he was very fond of me. I was the other daughter. When I was going through my difficulties, he said two things to me, amongst many other things. He said, in your hand, you've got the most powerful weapon, your pen. And God has gifted you with that. Don't allow you or any other circumstances that you're going through to take away, because that power of the pen doesn't reside in just anybody. It is a few of people. And I didn't understand that. He was saying it in his sophisticated English. And then the second thing he said to me, Vido, that Thelela, process your pain. Because if you don't process your pain, the best of Thelela can never come out, because it is clouded in pain and judgment. This book was born from that book, Vido. I was wrestling with my own life. I was trying to find a Thelela post events that had happened in my life. And those events that had threatened my own identity in the church. I was beginning to understand, who is Thelela post these events? And your project, God, landed it in me, because I had listed quite a few people that I wanted to write about. But there was a nagging feeling every time I had that list, you must write about Vido Nyobole. Now, Bishop Mkhoto had said this before. We all experience Vido. I was a young Sunday school visiting Nondlwana Methodist Church. My aunt, Umakazi, Tembelani's mother, they had a house in NU8 in Tanzania. So we would be living between our home and NU8. And we never really knew where we belonged, because we were always moving between these two homes, and Tembelani likewise. So I would visit Nondlwana, and there would be this minister who was breaking pulpits, because that's how we would remember Vido, is that minister. So he inspired us. He became part of our growing up. And when we became guilders and we became young activists in the Methodist Church, it was the likes of Vido, or Andile, Mvume, all that generation that we looked up to. So this book was born because I was inspired by Vido's ministry. But it was not only that inspired me about Vido, it was also the second one, the unconventional ministry of Vido. I wanted to understand as a scholar and as a researcher and just as a curious person, what kind of value does a minister who goes to secular places brings to the church? Because I had heard when Vido was going to be elected as the general secretary of the church, there was so much criticism from other corners that he doesn't have the necessary experience from the circuit work, that kind of thing, because he had spent most of his time. So as a scholar, I don't take things for granted. I wanted to ask that question. Is there value of a minister who goes out and works in secular world and brings it to the church? And I must say, when you go and read the book, all Vido's detractors were proven wrong. I took liberties to analyze not only his tenure as a general secretary of the church, but I also looked back at previous tenures like Vivian Harris, Tade Mkhoba, and the other name is out of my head. But I looked at that because I wanted to do some kind of comparative analysis, so that my conclusions are based on some sound empirical evidence that you were actually wrong because you didn't do so. So that was the second motivation of that unconventional ministry. I mean, TRC, Spornet, Transnet, all those kind of things. And then I came to a conclusion at the end that indeed, he brought value as one of the greatest administrators this church has ever had. And then it begs the question, does the office of the General Secretary of the church only needs a pastor or a combination of the two? Then I would leave that to scholars of theology. I'm not one, but I've tried to examine a bit of that there. You'll find, and I'm postulating, there's a bit of postulations. I've got my own biases on it after examining Vido's life. And then the third thing, it was one of my motivations was to say, Vido's life was full of joys. He went to the higher mountains, I write. But I've also seen Vido going to the lowest of valleys. And now, as a writer, I don't do paparazzi. I'm a scholar. I try to critically examine things. I wanted to understand, how does a minister deal with the lowest moments of life? Because one of the greatest writers in Africa writes, Ngungiwa Tiongo, that character is made during difficult times, or sometimes the worst of it gets to be revealed during difficult times. So I sought to understand that, did Vido's character become the best or worst? Hence the title, Servant for All Seasons, because at the end, then I concluded based on findings that he could navigate and transcend all the difficulties he went through, because indeed he was that servant. Then the fourth important thing, maybe at a personal level, and maybe the point that almost all the speakers here were illuminating, was Thelela, the writer, Thelela, the scholar, beginning to understand the importance of African scholarship and how does look like in a Methodist church that is Black-led in totality, or at least mostly Black-led, and does being Black-led as a Methodist church translates to Black ethos? So I pose those questions. And at a personal level, I wanted to find a way that we can infuse that I understand of African scholarship and what we have inherited through colonialism. And that is a very complex thing to do, because that intersection has got a tendency to collide sometimes. You hardly find convergence. Simulation maybe, yes. But convergence is very difficult because it clashes. And I'm afraid one of the conclusions I find is that indeed we're mainly Black-led, but there's still mainly white ethos practiced in the church. And then it brings me to the last point, BMC. Because I grew up inspired by Vido myself, and my father was close to the Ngcetane, so I was influenced by that generation. And I couldn't leave BMC out of the analysis of Vido. And I asked the question, is the BMC still relevant? And so I do a thorough examination, uses the work of Chiselwa, uses the work of Forster, uses the work of Kumalo, Grasso, and many other scholars who have looked at the BMC. And after examining all of them, then I come to a conclusion, and I must make a disclaimer that I, as Thelela Ngcetane Vika, uncompromisingly, I align myself with those who say BMC still has a place. And I'll tell you why I believe strongly. And my conviction is based on a number of reasons, but I'll only share one with you. If this world, at least the country we're living in, of course, we're global citizens who are still experiencing all forms of injustices, that on its own for me is a reason for BMC to exist. Maybe the question then that we need to ask, and I argue in the book, is whether BMC needs to be repurposed or it ceases to be about who brings whatever to the table, but what. And it's a very extensive examination. And the last point, maybe I would say, I've examined also the TRC. What I did with Vido, I followed all the institutions that Vido went. I looked at FETSEM from 1960s. It goes to Mthatha. It has a short stint in Mthatha, and then it goes to Pietermaritzburg. I look at that, and I also examine the painful demise of FETSEM, and I ask fundamental questions of theological training, ecumenical training, all those kind of things. I also follow the TRC, and I ask critical questions. Why are Black South Africans still bleeding post a TRC? It seemed like an iconic and a noble cause, but iconic and noble, the intentions were, we're still bleeding. And I look at the works of many scholars, your Professor Bosak. I've examined a lot of his work, and Professor Maluleke, among others, but it's a lot of work that I've tried to do there, because I am trying to pose the questions that I think are critical in this juncture. As Africans begin to define themselves with Vido in a global world that's trying to contaminate, sometimes it's difficult to find intersections, but I am proposing through your book that maybe Africans, they've got a responsibility to begin to ask questions that are fundamental first to their identity, or at least to what they understand to be. And if anything, the works that have been done by your generation and the generation before you have laid a mark. And the last point I make, I argue that Fanon was right, that every generation has a duty. They can either betray it or fulfill it. Yours was done in good service, and you have honored the likes of Dr. Bartman. And I write in one sentence, what the mentor intended, the mentee received. In conclusion, I am saying with this book, let the one who has watered this Methodist Church and us as young activists be watered now. We're trying to water you. One of the things we're always criticized as Black scholars that we don't write about our own. And I wanted to dispel that. That is not true. We can hold our pens for our people. And I must say, Vido, in conclusion, it was my absolute honor to hold my pen for you. I had many sleepless nights. Many think that this book was written in October. It wasn't. It was conceptualized in 2019, October, November 2019, and then COVID happened. And in 2020, and difficulties of COVID, people passing away, emotional difficulties, and it made it challenging sometimes. But I'm grateful that my parents must be happy, because one of the things they taught me, you are worthy by your word, my girl. My father would say, never make promises you don't honor. And it brings me so much joy with Vido. I'm beyond thrilled that I was able to honor a commitment I made to you. May God allow me more words, more pens, more papers, more laptops, more iPads, more phones to write stories. And this scholarship benefited from many, many scholars, esteemed scholars. And I will mention a few the book has. I see my friend here, Dr. Jonathan Muringani. He's based in Norway. He has joined. He was one of those who were part of the first page of the book. And I would wake him up at any time, please look at this page. I'm a fussy writer. I've worked on 50 drafts, and he was very patient. Even this morning, he was still correcting something I sent to him, because I surround myself with people who are better than me, because I want to be the best. And I had a research assistant, Dr. Kunzai, who was really, really, really good. And I benefited to a number of work. And on TRC, I used a work from Professor Dion Foster, Professor Christo. I benefited from Professor Kumalo, who became the editor of the book, but more than the editor of the book, who helped me to shape the thinking, because I just didn't want this book, Vido, to be just a lazy read. I wanted it to tell the story of your life, but hopefully it can bring all of us, because it is my conviction that when we are together, when we are one, when we find common cause, we can do better and contribute in this country, of course, in our church. And I hope, Vido, I have done justice to you. But if I have fallen short, please know I gave it all my soul. As I move on to new projects, new books, new scholarship, part of my soul will always remain with servants. It healed me, Vido, when I was broken. And I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful. Thank you. And this is the virtual handover of your book. May your retirement and the life and balcony be illuminated by this, from the humble beginnings in Berkeley East to the highest office of the Methodist Church, from the lowest valleys of your life to the highest mountains. You made us better, Vido. We are better human beings. If it's only one thing I would love to learn and emulate from you, because I don't think it's my strength, is humility. And that's all, if you could. Because udluliso Vido. But this is for you. You deserve this. You've worked hard for this. And I haven't done much. All I had to do was just to sit in front of a computer and put your work in paper. Not much from my side. And I want to thank each and every one of you who has taken time to tune in. Thank you for making me better. Thank you for gracing this occasion. Each and every one of you have got a piece of my soul. Each and every one of you have got a piece of who I am. We're all becoming. And as we seek to become better people every day, we learn. And I write in the first chapter, I wrote Vido's story, not because it was a perfect story. After all, Vido, whose story is perfect? None of us. But thank you for all the nuggets of wisdom, for the stories and everything. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Thelela. Thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable, and thank you for sharing with us the valleys that the story came from. May I just check, Thelela, are you still uploading the video.
If I may come in, moderator, the technical team that is busy with the videos is currently experiencing technical problems, but as the program continues, we will try to add the videos. So there is that problem that I just wanted to highlight to you.
Okay, so I will proceed with the program and you will warn me accordingly. In proceeding with the program, I will now request Usingaye ukuba athethe. But Vido, you and I have a connection that started at FETSEM and it ended at SNNS. I witnessed your trustworthy and reliable leadership, your incredible judgment. I witnessed your graciousness, your authentic leadership, and your genuine love for people. And today's celebration is very worthy. And I just wanted to say that there are two things that I will always remember that give me an indelible connection to you. The one is that when my father had his 80th birthday, and I was saying, Dad, what time are we starting this birthday? He said to me, the only time we'll start this birthday is when the Methodist Church arrives. And I said, who's the Methodist Church? He said, when Vido arrives, we start the birthday. He is the Methodist Church. And closer to the time that my father was about to pass, he said to us, the first person you should call if anything happens to me is Vido, because he is the Methodist Church. So put Vido over to you for a wonderful connection that passes all generations. And what a wonderful celebration of your life. Thank you, put Vido. Over to you. But Vido, over to you. Unmute yourself.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you to all who have joined us this evening. It's quite an emotional moment, having listened to all those complimentary words that have been said this evening. How I wish I had more time, but I'm aware that we are 15 minutes over the time limit that we have set for ourselves. And therefore would not want to go through the long speech that I had prepared. But I am profoundly heartened by your turnout tonight in this virtual launch and wish to thank you for sharing in this life-changing moment in my life and that of my family. I have received a number of complimentary messages since the announcement of the launch, and I'm overwhelmed by the words that have been said today and by the interest that has been shown, especially on social media. I'm really overwhelmed. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that there would be someone who would see my life story and ministry as worthy of recording and showcasing. I never believed that I have joined the ministry to live a legacy, because I've always understood myself as to answer my master's call and do what my master has asked me to do. In the words of Charles Wesley, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill, or may it all my powers engage to do my master's with. And that has been what has been motivating me. And so I never believed that it could come to this. When Thelela initially approached me, I took it as a joke. I suggested to her that there were many outstanding Methodist people and ministers who deserved that honor. But she was determined, insistent, and relentlessly persuasive. Even at the time when I finally relented, I never expected that it would see the light of the day. But surprise, surprise, a year later, I have in my hands a well-written masterpiece of my life story, Servant for All Seasons, which I receive with gratitude and accept with great humility. I truly feel honored and blessed. Thank you, Thelela. I marvel at the way the Lord has inspired you and used you, my spiritual daughter, to put a spotlight on my life and ministry in this remarkable way. And as Professor Khumalo has already said, that this book is really not about me per se, but it's telling the story of the people called Methodists and the people who had taken part in my life and those institutions that I've been part of. And so in the process of writing this book, my biographer, Thelela, helped me to critically reflect on my life, to retrace my roots and identity, and also identify significant events and moments in my life that shaped who I am. It also was a painful exercise because to those dark corners and alleys of my life that I never want to revisit again. And so I became vulnerable as we went on. But through her persistent probing and digging, I was able to find meaning and purpose, even in those events that seemed trivial and significant, and those that I had taken for granted. There are many people who formed and shaped my life. Bishop Mukhotu has also alluded to those that have answered the higher, that have gone to higher service, who really shaped my life, starting from my parents and many others who I met along the way, who made me a better person, who made me who I am today. How I wish some of them were still alive. And so this book is really one of the things that I will treasure in my days in all the days of my life, and it will remain precious. It is my hope and prayer that this book, which is a sacrificial gift of love from Thelela, who has invested her time, her resources, her everything to make this dream to others, as especially young people, as the presiding bishop has said, to write stories of this nature and to reflect critically on the lives of those who have gone before, so that they would seek to emulate them and take a leaf out of their lives. taking the form of a servant and not looking after his interests, but the interests of others. If this book is anything, it is a classical example of how God can use an imperfect life, a broken life, to achieve his purpose. When Bishop Ivan Abrams inducted me for the office of the, that is from the Corinthians, that God uses foolish things
Is Vido still there? I think it kicked him out. Moderator?
I'm still here. I was hoping that I would give him a chance to complete his commentary.
I think we lost him.
Oh, what a tragedy.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, he's back. He's back.
Oh, yes. I don't know where you lost me, but I say in conclusion, I thank my God who already at my birth had chartered my destiny and had ordered that I would be his servant through the media to the best of my ability to remain faithful and obedient to that call. And I can only hope, in line with his promise, that one day when I close my eyes in death, that I will also be where my Lord is. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I have no enough words to thank you. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Vido, for those touching words. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your graciousness. Thank you for your authenticity. And thank you for your love for people. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your fearlessness. Thank you for exuding gravitas and teaching us all what it means to be a servant. I'm going to move to the conclusion of this by requesting Reverend Bishop Siwa to give us a vote of thanks. Budzipo, over to you. Bishop Siwa, are you there?
Yes. Moderator, Dr. Pumla Mnganga, esteemed guests, and especially the guest of honor, Fundisi Vido Nyobole and Sis Nongazimlo. Mine is to try and verbalize what I perceive to be the sentiments of the Amakokwa and the Jola families who are the parents of this Lenkwenkwe Engumkulua today. Those present and those who have moved on to the church triumphant. The esteemed guests here present, Thelela and team, and we praise God for this, what you have already heard from the many speakers and also those who have populated the chat room. This is indeed a moment, an occasion of appreciation and excitement from everyone. We are this evening reminded of the goodness that is in our midst in such a time as this. And indeed, it is a valuable moment. We want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We realize that we're at a time when there is a perception of leadership drought, but the guests who have graced this occasion and those who have joined us from other social media elsewhere, and those who have written and spoken are a reminder that indeed we are in the midst of goodness and greatness, because all of you are a source of hope and encouragement. It is indeed easy not to be aware of what is around. It is also easy not to know or even forget the contributions and sacrifices made, which serve as sources of inspiration and moral reference points in our time. So this reflection on the work of Mfundisi Vido Nyobole is one of many reflective moments that can contribute positively towards shaping the future and encouraging us to offer what God has placed in us, because there's a great need in this time. But for Thelela, we appreciate the way you have crafted the story. It is indeed an inclusive story of what has shaped this gentle giant. It is very African. And thank you, Gebane. And I know that this contribution will help in shaping leaders, not only in the Methodist Church, but in our country, in our region, in our connection, in our continent, and even in the whole globe. I want to remember the words, the poetic words of Thomas Gray, when he wrote, "Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of ocean bare. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air." And so thank you, Mkulwa, for leaving out the gem of purest ray serene for many to see. And thank you, Thelela, for listening to the promptings of the Holy Spirit to research and write so that this fragrance is not wasted on the desert air, but will go into the leadership storage bin for future generations, for the continent of Africa, towards a better future. And thank you all, esteemed guests, for gracing this occasion with your presence and your inputs and the comments and contributions in the chat room. Thank you for the team that brought us together in this room. And to you, Dr. Phumla Mnganga, for moderating this session so beautifully. You know what? This our country, to be specific, is gifted with so much talent, so much people of character, so much goodness that we sometimes miss the point. And in my mother's language, thank you, Phumla. Thank you, esteemed guest. Thank you, everyone. Siyabulela, siyabonga, realeboa. We know that the time is against us, but thank you all. Thank you, much, much appreciated. Chawe, Chawe, keep looking after my dear Mkulua. You have been exceptionally good in helping us to come to this moment. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, moderator.
Enkosi Mfundisi Usiwa, for that vote of thanks. And you've reminded us that this country is abundant with talent and intellectual capability and reflective thought. As we move towards the end of this event, I just want to thank everybody who's been part of it. And thank you that we should be absolutely grateful that we belong to the Methodist Connection. We should be absolutely grateful that we belong to a Christian community that is South African, but that is also global in its outreach. And Thelela, thank you for reminding us that in order to achieve global preeminence, we have to first root ourselves in African scholarship. We have to root ourselves in our African identity. And it is only then that we can achieve global and international preeminence on our terms, telling our own stories, telling our own stories of leadership and telling our own stories of greatness. But Vido, thank you for the privilege of being a moderator at your beautiful book launch, and may this book live from generation to generation. I'm going to request my namesake, Reverend Phumla Nzimande, to close for us in prayer. Phumla, are you there?
Yes, moderator, I am here. Come, let us pray. O God, the author, the giver, and the sustainer of all life, as we conclude our time together, we give you praise for the life of Reverend Vuyani Nyobole. We give you thanks for the gift that he has been to many people in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa and beyond. We thank you for a journey that started even before he was born, for you sanctified him and set him apart as prophet of nations, a servant for all seasons. And you did this whilst he was still in his mother's womb. We thank you that even before he commenced his probation journey in 1975, you were already at work in and through him. And as the church affirmed his suitability for the Methodist ministry through the act of ordination in 1981, you had already declared, "This is my son in whom I delight." We praise you for the leader that we have come to know in him. We praise you for the preacher that we have come to know and love. We praise you for the example of servanthood that he continues to be for those laboring in your vineyard. We bless you for being the God of all seasons in his life, because it is your faithfulness that has kept him faithful to you and to the work of extending the kingdom through the seasons of his life. In the autumn, when all that was beautiful and appealing to him started to fall as leaves fall off a tree, you were his shelter. In the cold winters of his life, when all seemed dead and bare, you held his hand. In the springtime, when all was merry and rosy, you were God. In the summer, when all was warm and the world was as it should be, thank you for the manner in which these stories are captured through the hand of your servant, Thelela. And tonight, as we celebrate this book launch, we ask that you would continue to spread in and through him the fresh aroma of the gospel of Jesus Christ, so that those who come after him may learn that greatness does not come from positions, greatness does not come from titles, greatness does not come from a place at the front table, but greatness comes from being a servant for all seasons. And so we thank you for the one who has had the vision to pen the life story of so great a giant. We pray that you continue to raise up men and women who will use their gifts to spread the fragrance of Christ. We bless you, oh God, for Thelela, a visionary, a scholar, a woman leadership development scholar, and a seasoned author. And as she continues to use her many gifts to inspire, develop, and transform, we ask that you will pilot her through your strength, uphold her through your might, guide her through your wisdom. Be the God who is before her, behind her, beneath her, and above her. And may goodness and mercy follow both Ngcetane Nyobole and Thelela all the days of their lives. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Colleagues,
Amen.
may we all say the grace together wherever we are. May the grace
of
our Lord Jesus Christ,
the
the love of God,
Holy Spirit,
fellowship of the Holy Spirit,
the Holy Spirit,
now
now forever and forever. Amen.
Moderator, just the last thing, the books are available on sale on the Methodist bookshop, the Wesley Guild. They've got a book store. The book is there. You order. I'm not a tech savvy, but they've done whatever. So the book is available, and physical copies will also be available in places like Reverend Nyobole's church and Pretoria around here. Will also be distributing some to Reverend Nyobole. SMMS will have copies. Will also dispatch copies to Cape Town, to East London. But by and large, we encourage people to buy from the online because logistically is better. And I'll be donating 10 of the books to SMMS Maliambe Yoguma. I'll safike phala greater, but I will be donating in pursuit of education. Let more styles rise and rise and rise. So book is available. Thank you.
Thank you, Thelela. Thank you, everybody. God be with you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Oh, I'm so excited, my sister.
Hi, darling.
Bye.